Hi, my name is Cath. I'm one of the three co-organisers of Swansea Zine Fest, and I'm a long-term zine maker and zine reader, so I've been reading and making zines for over 12 years now. One of the things I've always loved about zines is the role they play as a tool for doing activism and social justice work, particularly for those of us on the fringes, so folks from marginalised communities and subcultures. And that's what I'm going to be talking about today. So if you're watching this, then you probably already know what zines are, but for anyone who doesn't, a zine is a physical, printed, handmade, self-published booklet. They're usually photocopied and independently made for the love of creation, for the love of sharing stories, so not for profit. This zine I'm showing you here is called Your Pretty Face is Going Straight to Hell, and it's written by Tuck Crew, who is one of the contributors from today's virtual Swansea Zine Fest. Zines can come in a range of different genres, including personal confessional writing, so that's what this zine is. These are referred to as zines. You can also get music fanzines, poetry zines, travel, politics, and art and craft, and various other genres. So in the talk today, I'm mostly going to be drawing upon more personal style zine writings, but other genres can also play a role in doing social justice activism. So zines, unlike blogs, are physical things you can hold in your hand. They show their age as ink fades and paper yellows and scuffs. And I think this physicality is important for a number of reasons. So first, zines feel more like a historical document, so the reader can place the writing in a particular context and a particular place and time. Blogs, I think even when they're date stamped, they can be taken out of context, they can seem decontextualised. So this freedom allows zinesters to explore ideas and identities in the pages, away from the fear of writing coming back to haunt them in years to come. So I think it's more of a time capsule that captures a writer's ideas and politics at a particular point in their lives. You know, it's easy to take someone's words out of context when they're written in a blog, where the only thing that tells you that this was written 15 years ago is the tiny byline on the bottom of the page. It's much harder to do this when you're holding a physical text with faded ink and scuffed pages and magazine cuttings from magazines that haven't been published in over a decade. This feels particularly important for zines where writers are working through their own self-identity, particularly complex intersectional identities, exploring the intersections of gender, sexuality, race, class, disability. The process of constructing our self-identity is messy and complex and sometimes contradictory, so I think zines allow us the freedom to do this and to be our full messy selves, to construct and deconstruct ourselves as much as we need to. So as Mimi Nguyen writes in her zine Slander, I don't have conclusions, only questions and frustrations. I'm a mess of contradictions myself. A bi-queer Asian girl madly in love with a straight white boy. I don't deconstruct, I just bask in the glow. So zines as physical items also create community. As well as zines themselves being physical things, materials accumulate around zines. So zine makers will trade zines in the mail, trade with each other. They'll exchange letters and flyers, correspondence between zinesters and between readers, between writers and readers. And these all form a connection. They connect people and our bodies. The smell of someone's house on the pages, handwriting felt through the underside of a page. And I think this adds to the experience of zines as a place to share stories about our lives, stories that are vital to share, that put a human face to experiences, that share the reality and complexities of our lives as women, as queer people, as neurodivergent people, whatever it may be. Other marginalised folks can identify with the stories they read in zines, and it can prompt them to share their own. So this was the case for me when I first started reading queer feminist zines 12 years ago. Zines can help us connect abstract theory to the kind of everyday, should I say something, moments of injustice, the everyday microaggressions that litter our lives, and they can prompt us to think, oh, that's what I'll say next time. People often write to zines saying things like, I never knew someone else felt the same way as I do, or I have been waiting for someone else to say this. So Toby Vale, one of the founding members of Bikini Kill, writes this in one of her zines from the 90s. Please listen to me, you motherfuckers. I, unlike hundreds of boy fanzine writers all across America, have a legitimate need and desperate desire to be heard. I am making a fanzine not to entertain or distract or exclude, or because I don't have anything better to do, but because if I didn't write these things, no one else would either. Zines are also important tools for allies outside of a particular community, so not just those of us within a community. So if readers don't know anyone from a particular background in real life, zines could be their first introduction to certain issues. To use a personal example, zines were instrumental in developing my political views, and particularly zines written by people of colour and trans people who introduced me to issues and ideas that I hadn't come across before, back when I was an 18-year-old baby liberal feminist. I mentioned just now about intersectional identities. This might be a slight sidebar, but I just wanted to come back to it. I think our identities are so depoliticised and flattened in mainstream media, even not just mainstream media, but even in kind of mainstream feminist thought. So people talk about women as though we were a monolith, as though we were all white, all straight, all wealthy. They campaign for Jane Austen on the banknote as though Tory austerity, transphobia and institutional racism weren't also women's issues, weren't more vital, life-changing women's issues. They bemoan the lack of girl bosses and CEOs and ignore the women earning minimum wage who clean the girl boss's office. So zines are not for profit. They're created out of a need for expression, not for financial success, which means they can be uncensored and honest. They can explore these contentious issues, for lack of a better word, that other publications may be too afraid to or may not be able to. So there's no expectation for it all to be wrapped up in a bow with a neat conclusion for a paying audience, no expectation to toe a party line, no agenda to push other than what you believe to be true. Many zines even take cuttings or words directly from mainstream media, like newspapers and magazines, and they subvert and deconstruct these words, so turning them into art as a cathartic approach, but also communicating resistance albeit at a small personal level. So I want to end by talking about zines and the politics of hope. I think social justice activism is ultimately built on hope, belief that people have the power to change, that we can foster deeper connections between people, that we have the power to change lives and to save lives. Otherwise, why would we do this work? Why organise? Why vote? Why picket? Why make zines if we didn't believe in our power to make the world a better place? I think now, when the world feels like the darkest possible timeline, when everything feels very overwhelmingly bleak sometimes, hope and belief in ourselves and belief in what we're capable of is more vital than ever. And it's this hope that I think is inherent in zine culture, this belief in new possibilities, and that's what inspires me to continue to read and write zines and to participate in an active, inclusive zine community, a community of strength and resistance. So to close, I'm going to share a quote from my favourite zine writer, Cindy Crabb, who writes a zine called Doris. I'm currently self-isolating in my parents' house, so I don't have all my zines with me, but I do have Doris's anthology books. This is an anthology of the first 10 years of her writing. So in Doris issue 24, Cindy invites us to let go of our ideological cynicism and self-limiting beliefs, and invites us to learn to hope. She writes, "But you can do everything, that's what I think. Our lives are long and full, and if we love and work and want, we can do it all. Everything, everything, even more than we are able to imagine."